I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one.
A Supreme Court justice just let us in on the truly dark and disturbing threats she and her family face. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, your home for independent, nonpartisan commentary and analysis on news, media, internet culture, and more. And we're going to take a look at some events unfolding today on the Hill in Congress, where two Supreme Court justices, one Democratic appointed, Elena Kagan, who was appointed by Obama, and then Amy Coney Barrett, who was appointed by President Trump in his first term, are testifying before Congress, which is not a super frequent occurrence. They testified this morning before the House, a Appropriations Committee subcommittee, and then they'll testify before the Senate this afternoon. And we've got a viral video coming out from Amy Coney Barrett detailing the truly disturbing threats, and I would actually label it as attempted murder that we will get into, that she has faced, as well as other justices have, because this all comes in the context of them requesting additional security funding. But it's worth getting into because this is a really big problem. Here is the headline from the Washington Post. Supreme Court justices seek security funds in rare congressional appearance. Justices Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett are set to testify before lawmakers amid escalating threats against the court. More from the article. The court has requested a $20.6 million budget increase for fiscal year 2027, including a $14.6 million increase to give each justice an additional 6 security agents, as well as 25 extra officers at the Supreme Court building. The court is also asking for $2 million for a residential security office to coordinate security at the justices' homes. And just for more context, over the last several years, we've seen a real increase in threats and even attempted assassination of one Supreme Court justice, Brett Kavanaugh, who a few years ago somebody showed up at his home intending to kill him, and then was thankfully did not go through with the attempt, but still very disturbing stuff, and it's part of a broader pattern. So the New York Times reported in 2025 that data from federal marshals shows a spike in threats against federal judges. So this is disturbing, just regardless of party or ideology. It doesn't really matter whether we're talking about a liberal-leaning justice or a conservative-leaning justice. We want them to be safe, first of all. That's just a matter of basic decency. And then we want them to feel free to make their decision based on what they think the law is, right? Or what they think the correct outcome is, rather than because of fear of what might happen to them if they don't rule a certain way. Allowing people to hijack the legal system through intimidation is absolutely anathema to judicial independence. And that's why it's really important to get a rein on this. And frankly, I'd give them whatever funding they request. This is, a drop in the bucket when it comes to the federal budget. So that's what these hearings are about, though. And I do want to play a clip from Amy Coney Barrett speaking about this, because she really did get personal and detailed the effect that this has had on her and her family. And it's shocking stuff. Let's watch.
So I thought I would just share a little bit about how the threats have affected me and my family personally. They have required me my children to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago, around the time of the Dobbs leak. My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof vest, and I carried it into my house, put it into my bedroom, dropped it down on a table, turned around, and my 12-year-old son was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and he wanted to know what it was and why I had it. And I didn't know how to respond, because maybe I lack imagination, but I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one.
So I'll just pause on this and say that may have been slightly naive of Justice Barrett. I mean, as much as it sucks, just with where our politics is at now, maybe should have expected that, but it is what it is. And it's horrible. You shouldn't have to. We should live in a different world where that is not a thing. But yeah, I'm very. That's very sad to hear. No parent should have to explain to their family that they're facing threats on their life because of doing their job and upholding, their role in our system of government. And that one in particular traces back to the leak of the Dobbs opinion. And if you've forgotten what happened there, the Dobbs opinion was the ruling in which the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And what happened, they never figured out who did it. After an investigation, they still did not catch the person. Someone leaked an early draft opinion to give and the world found out the Supreme Court was probably going to overturn Roe v. Wade. And then they were just inundated with threats and harassment and criticism and trying to pressure them and bully them into not going through with it. And that, regardless of how you feel about abortion, really, just as a matter of judicial independence, is a disgraceful thing that happened. And it's a real shame they never were able to catch the person who did it, because what they did is certainly illegal. And they definitely, if there's still a Supreme Court staffer or a justice or whoever did it, they should have been removed and held accountable for it. And I don't know what it ultimately was. And it represented a really chilling period where, particularly in that instance, progressives were harassing and threatening the judges in hopes of intimidating them into keeping their preferred constitutional doctrine in place. That's not how it's supposed to work. And it's really dark stuff. And I'm not going to forget about it. I feel like a lot of people in our current political moment, people forget things very fast. But a lot about that era stays with me, and it should stay with you. And it will stay with Amy Coney Barrett's family forever. Now, we're going to get into the next bit here, where I think this could genuinely be considered, what she's about to discuss, an attempted murder against Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she doesn't call it that. Listen to how she describes it, and then we'll discuss. Let's watch.
It's also been reported in the news that roughly 6 weeks ago, I was the victim of a swatting incident. At that point, one of my teenage sons, opened the door to go out with friends and saw in our street, it was full of police cars who had responded to a false report of gunshots and raised voices in my home. I was very, very grateful that I had Supreme Court police outside my home, because they were able to stop and meet with and explain to the county police that it had been a false alarm, and so the police did not actually attempt to enter our home. Many of us, me included, have received threatening anonymous deliveries designed to intimidate and harass us. They are often sent in the name of Judge Salas's son, who I think, as you mentioned in the beginning, Mr. Chairman, is deceased because he was killed by a disgruntled lawyer who showed up at Judge Salas's home intending to kill her, but her son, 20 years old at the time, opened the door and took the bullet instead. Her husband, standing behind, was seriously injured. So I think
horrible.
The message on these deliveries being sent in his name is clear. As Justice Kagan said, federal judges across the country, throughout the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, continue to do their jobs without fear or favor, but the threat level is really high.
Yeah, it certainly is. And like I said, I just give them whatever funding they're requesting. It's such a tiny, inconsequential amount of taxpayer money in the grand scheme of things. And it's one of the rare things that I feel is a perfectly legitimate and acceptable use of our tax dollars, rather than some wasteful program, keeping them safe and allowing them to do their jobs and protecting against these unhinged crazy people. I mean, how dark is that? So what she mentioned there, and I watched the full hearing, and so in the opening remarks, the chairman of the committee talked about a federal judge who faced, an attempted assassination, and her son was killed because he opened the door to the crazy person with the gun, and he was shot. And people are sending the Supreme Court justices mail with the name of the son on it. That's clearly a threat. That's clearly a very dark insinuation that's meant to intimidate them. And it's despicable. Those people should be tracked down and held accountable for that if they're, engaging in something that crosses the line in beyond just criticism into threats. That's not acceptable. And then I want to talk a little bit more about this swatting attempt that Amy Coney Barrett is recounting here, and this was reported, so she's not breaking it for the first time, but she's letting us into what happened and what it was like for her. I think that swatting someone, which if you don't know, what it is essentially in order to harass someone or endanger them potentially, you call in a fake police report suggesting, for instance, that like they have a hostage or there's gunshots. And so the goal is, and this has happened in some cases, that the police show up and bang in their door and go in guns drawn into their home and scare the shit out of them in the middle of the night or wherever. And that, I think, should be treated as an extremely serious crime to do that to somebody, to intentionally lodge a false report that human life is in danger, to then have law enforcement go create a dangerous situation that would be justified, of course, if there was actually a hostage. But if there isn't, then they're just kicking in someone's door or barging in and with guns drawn on somebody and scaring and traumatizing people. And in some cases, people get killed because, I mean, when you have a fraught situation where guns are drawn and maybe you're a gun owner in your home and somebody's just kicking in your door in the middle of the night and you come out with a gun and maybe this has happened, then the SWAT officers think that he's got a gun and they shoot you and you're dead. I mean, that's a very real possibility. That would be, a horrible situation all around, and the officers wouldn't even necessarily be at fault, but the person who sent in a fake tip that led to that situation, it would have effectively murdered the person. And because you are foreseeably creating a situation in which someone could lose their life, I genuinely think swatting should be viewed as attempted murder, or at least attempted assault or endangerment of some kind. And it's not funny. I'm glad that in this case, it didn't really escalate, but that happens to people all the time in the public eye, not just Supreme Court justices. Now, they have, like she said, the Supreme Court police outside the home that were able to let the local PD, like, hey, you don't need to go storming in. But it happens to YouTubers and podcasters and journalists and congressmen. And it is something our laws and our criminal justice system haven't fully caught up with policing. But I think it's despicable. And I genuinely think it's like a form of attempted murder. And so it's just a horrific thing that was done to Amy Coney Barrett. Attempted to be done. It wasn't successful, but obviously the attempt is still, really, really f***ed up. And because you hate her views on abortion or her ruling or whatever, might as well traumatize and endanger her 12-year-old son. Some of y'all people are sick. But it's not just, I want to be clear though, that like the broader demonization of the Supreme Court is happening across the political spectrum. So Republicans and conservatives, or even Donald Trump himself, are fear-mongering about not getting their way at this court and acting like the Supreme Court is destroying civilization by upholding a birthright citizenship decision that, whether you agree with it or not, is just, continuation of how things have been for hundreds of years and is a perfectly legitimate position of constitutional interpretation. And then you demonizing them and saying, like, they'll destroy our whole economy if they strike down my crazy tariff regime. It's like he is absolutely riling people up against the Supreme Court with this really intense fervor in a way that is reckless. And so are left-wing people when they lie about the Supreme Court and claim it's a MAGA court, when in fact it, sometimes rules in favor of the president, but sometimes makes him crash out by blocking his agenda because they do think it's unconstitutional and it's actually an independent institution. There's also, I think there's some legitimate debate to be had and some concerns about needing, a potential a stricter judicial code of ethics about gifts and other things. There's a lot of like very overblown and overwrought narratives about how the Supreme Court is supposedly totally corrupt and bought off and all this that has very little, like it's very overblown and not a lot of there at the root of it. And all of it needs to stop. It all results in this hostile and fervor and just toxic environment where crazy people then go make threats or call in these attempted swattings that I, again, view as a form of attempted murder. And so, yes, fully fund the security the Supreme Court needs, but we've also got to try to address the underlying problem, which is really a broader problem in our politics of rising support for political violence, rising dehumanization of our political opponents, and increasingly unhinged and erratic people behaving in despicable ways. So I'm sorry, whether it's Amy Coney Barrett or, the liberal justices who've been threatened as well. I'm very sorry they had to experience that. And I hope they were able to get the resources they need to, in the short term, address this. But we've also got to get shit under control, big picture here, because things are not okay in American politics and culture, and they're not getting better at the moment unless we really, really change course. So that's my take on this. I wanted to bring you guys up to date with the latest happenings at the Hill, with a pretty rare appearance from the Supreme Court justice testifying before the House and later the Senate. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you aren't yet, hit the like button, and do consider becoming a channel member if you want to support an independent and nonpartisan commentary and analysis channel. Unfortunately, the best business model on political YouTube is to just pander to one extreme exclusively, and you can get millions of subscribers and make millions of dollars. I don't do that. So I do need support from viewers like you. Hit the join button or click the link in the description or pinned comment to support me. I also do members of videos where I answer questions and comments from members. So if you have feedback for me, or a question or a roast or anything you want me to potentially respond to, just become a channel member and then drop it down below in the comments section. With that, guys, we'll leave it there for this one and be back with more real soon.